Hello and welcome to this year's virtual CUBE ceremony. My name is Jonah Liss and I am a graduated senior. I began my CUBE journey in 2018 when I gave an informative presentation on the technology behind and social implications of autonomous vehicles. Now, I'm happy to introduce this year's speakers. These talented individuals have worked hard over the past few months to prepare and rehearse a speech on a topic of their choice. We hope you enjoy listening to their performance. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Tanay, who will be sharing his knowledge on particle physics.
What is everything around us made of? I'm sure that's a question you've thought of before. Well, that question is being answered right now in a specific field of modern science, particle physics. By definition, particle physics is the branch of physics that studies the nature and interactions of particles that constitute matter and radiation. Today, particle physics explores the frontiers and boundaries of the universe at levels unmatched by any other field, observing the smallest distances, highest energies, and earliest points in time. In fact, particle physics is getting us closer to understanding the true nature of our reality itself. What do we know about it so far? The idea of units that make up everything around us started when Greek philosophers formulated atoms. Atoms, as you may know, are known as the most basic units of matter. Since the beginning of atomic theory, scientists have discovered much more about the atom, finding that they consisted of further particles like protons, neutrons, and electrons. From there, our understanding of subatomic particles revolutionized through the 20th century. What did we do to further study them? Scientists accelerated particles at high energies and collided them with one another. The European Center for Nuclear Research, or CERN, was founded in the 1950s, and it's the largest particle physics lab in the world. There lies the Large Hadron Collider, a 17-mile-long particle accelerator. Using these accelerators, we smash particles into each other, and then we can observe further particles that make up the ones we already know about. Over the last 100 years, several breakthroughs and new math in this field have led us to summarize our basic understanding of the particles that make up the universe, the Standard Model of particle physics. The Standard Model classifies the elementary particles that make up matter, and also the particles that govern the fundamental forces and interactions. These particles cannot be broken down any further, and all other particles you know about in the universe are made up of them. As seen in this part, quarks are the particles that make up protons and neutrons. Electrons are fundamental themselves, and neutrinos are a special type of low-mass particle that exist almost everywhere but don't interact with us that much. So these particles make up all the known matter in the universe. On the other side, we have the force carrier particles, governing the fundamental forces. The fundamental forces are the most basic forces in the universe that govern how objects and particles interact. All bigger forces can be derived to them. There are four fundamental forces: electromagnetism, strong force, weak force, and gravity. Photons are particles that are responsible for electromagnetic force, so it gives us light, electricity, magnetism, and other forms of EM radiation. Gluons are particles that mediate the strong force, which holds atoms together. The W and Z bosons are responsible for weak force, which is involved in many nuclear interactions like fusion, so it's the reason why our sun shines. Lastly, the Higgs boson is responsible for mass, interacting with different particles in different ways to give them their mass. So here it is, the Standard Model. All forms of matter can be derived to these particles. All forces and all interactions can be derived to these fundamental forces and the particles that govern them. We also know what causes objects to have mass. This is our latest understanding of our universe as we know it. Yet there are some limitations to this model. One of them is the uncertainty principle. You see, when things get small, things get weird due to quantum mechanics, so there's a limit to how precisely we can measure and observe things at a quantum level. In reality, we cannot concretely observe or represent elementary particles like electrons because they're just way too small. So small, in fact, that we can't clearly look at them. Because of this, scientists represent elementary particles as points, though they really aren't. By representing them as points mathematically, we've been able to calculate their interactions with great accuracy. In other words, these fundamental particles aren't really just a single point in space, but we're saying that they are for calculations. Along with the uncertainty principle is the big issue of gravity. Like I said earlier, the four fundamental forces in the universe are electromagnetism, strong force, weak force, and gravity. The Standard Model explains the first three, but not gravity. Gravity is best described by Einstein's theory of relativity, and his reasoning has been the most accurate up until now. However, what we know about relativity does not go together whatsoever with what we know about quantum physics. Scientists have tried to represent gravity as a particle, but the math simply does not work out. This is the biggest issue with modern physics, the gap between relativity and quantum mechanics, gravity versus the standard model, a gap that is yet to be bridged. Nonetheless, our study of particle physics through the years has gotten us very far in understanding our reality and what really makes up the world around us. With all of this being said, you may ask, what does all of this mean to me? In reality, particle physics is much more than just abstract ideas, reasonings, and theories. Our understanding of particles and technologies in this field have been very beneficial to modern society. One of the biggest contributions is in the medical field and biomedical technologies. Our understanding of tracking particles and their collisions is used heavily in PET and MRI scans, where the tracing of particles is used to generate images of the internal body. These scans provide screening for a variety of conditions and help tell us what might be wrong with your body. Along with imaging and diagnostics, particle physics plays a major role in therapy, including those for cancer. Every major medical center in the nation uses particle accelerators that produce X-rays, protons, neutrons, or other heavy ions for the diagnosis and treatment of disease. It's estimated that there are over 10,000 operating accelerators around the world that have treated over 30 million patients. Furthermore, certain particle accelerator technologies allow us to determine the specific protein structure of viruses and mutations in the body that cause disease, allowing us to develop specific drugs to prescribe for those conditions. As we can see, particle physics plays a crucial role in medical diagnostics and treatment, as well as in the pharmaceutical industry. In terms of computing, particle physics is actually truly responsible for the high level of technology we can have today. Accelerator-assisted manufacturing is allowing processing materials such as semiconductors to be made smaller and faster, making technology cheaper and more accessible for everyday consumers like us. Our understanding of specific particle properties in quantum computing will soon allow us to store vast amounts of virtual information in the smallest of spaces. Particle technologies have also allowed us to handle very large amounts of data, and the World Wide Web itself was created by particle physicists. Particle physics is central to the reduced size and efficiency of computing technologies, is a major player in the handling of data transmission, and is essentially responsible for the internet and why you can see this presentation today. The field has even further applications in areas like industry, energy, and national security, with some examples including efficient power transmission and nuclear waste monitoring. Above all these benefits to society, particle physics is helping us truly understand the nature of our reality and the world around us, as well as the boundaries of our universe and our knowledge of it. While there still is a lot more to learn about and a lot more problems to solve, this field is truly revolutionary to science. Whether it was Lewis and Clark's expedition of the West or the Apollo missions to the moon, we humans have always supported the exploration of our world, and this is why I'm trying to inform you guys and encourage support of this marvelous field and the limits that it explores. And it turns out, particle physics plays a bigger role in your life than you thought it did. Particle physics is a new frontier for science and human understanding, and because of it, we've benefited several areas of society, solved many mysteries about our universe, and are now closer than ever to understanding the nature of our reality and what everything around us really is made of. Thank you.
Wow, thanks Tanay for that mind-blowing presentation. I had no idea about the many applications of particle physics in our everyday lives. We will certainly need leaders to harness its endless possibilities, which is why it's my pleasure to introduce everyone to Qingqing, who will talk about the importance of leadership.
Hi, my name is Qingqing, and I am a sophomore at the IA. My speech is called The King of the Jungle, and it is about leadership traits, importance, and lions. Hakuna Matata. We all know Simba from The Lion King, directed by Rob Minkoff and Roger Allers. This movie was one of my personal favorite movies of all time. Young Simba was a silly and cute lion cub with a curious and kind personality. As his home and family in the savannah are taken by enemies, he is chased into the jungle where he spent the remainder of his childhood with his literal prey, a warthog and a meerkat. Surprisingly, Simba befriends his two jungle companions, and they begin to live life in the jungle with no worries. As most know, Simba meets his childhood crush Nala, and Nala urges Simba to hurry back and help their crumbling home, while facing the test of courage as he works with his fellow lions to take back what was originally his. Generally, lions have always been known as the king, sitting at the top of the food chain, but what exactly makes them a king? At the zoo, lions have the characteristics that make them natural leaders in their environment. The most important leadership traits that are also present in lions are the ability to be brave and courageous. Ironically, bravery and courageousness were leadership characteristics that Simba did not have after losing everything and starting a completely new life in the jungle. Eating bugs and chewing leaves were the exact opposite of a lion's carnivore diet, and refraining from chewing up his mammal friends was probably extremely difficult as well. Simba's Hakuna Matata, or no worries lifestyle in the jungle, was his way of pushing out his harsh memories and denying the courage to face his fears. Other than Simba, a normal lion would have these exact characteristics. A lion's food supply is diverse, and their food is able to supply their energy and confidence. A lion's power to reign over the animal hierarchy just shows how they are naturally kings in the jungle, and that the traits of confidence are naturally inside their blood. Moreover, not just their monarchy within the environment, they also have certain habits that distinguish themselves among leaders. According to a National Geographic article, lions live in groups called prides, consisting up to 40 lions, male and female. Now, the most interesting part is how lions defend their territory, and they do this by setting boundaries with their urine. Yes, urine. As others intrude their land, they fight notably against them, raising their large teeth and furry heads. Similarly, leaders in the contemporary world fight for their families and their territory, or in other words, their stances. Historical leaders in the past have also done the same, fighting for their territory and their supportive family. Courageousness and bravery are essentially why lions are leaders within their society. Their confidence in themselves allow companions to respect them, just like Simba, who was able to be the Lion King after a harsh battle of courage. His internal conflict was resolved with the help of his friends, and it was his courageousness that allowed him to stick up, to fight, and to defend. Not only in lions, but courageousness and bravery are also what we in the contemporary world look upon. Whether it is racial injustice, gender inequality, or humanitarian rights, be courageous and speak up, because that is exactly what a leader does. Every community has flaws, and a leader is needed to point those out. The many problems we have in our world today require a leader to voice an opinion among the public. A leader guides his peers to defend what is right. A leader grows with friends. A leader is like a lion, fierce and brave, with all the courage needed to give voice in society. A leader also stands for those who are defenseless, who are struggling to get up. A lion stands up for their family, and their pack helps fight when predators arrive. They take head-on fights, paw to paw, roaring with pride and confidence as they bite down their enemy. Even if they do fall, they jump back on the back feet quickly, pouncing with excitement. The rush of adrenaline with the addition of courage and bravery undeniably gives victory to the lion. They are proud of themselves, and so are their weaker companions, and continue to support their leader wholeheartedly. Although lions are from the savannah, Simba developed his leadership skills in the jungle, and to me, the jungle was a symbol of his courageousness and bravery. He was able to face that challenge, making him the victor of his weaknesses, or in other words, the king of his jungle. Simba's story is something that connects to the influence of courageousness and bravery, and those traits sculpted him into the Lion King he is today. In other words, a leader. To be a leader, you must be a lion. Think courageously, defend bravely, and live with pride. Lions are a symbol of leadership. They are kings, they're influencers, and most importantly, from Simba himself, they laugh in the face of danger. Thank you.
Thank you, Qingqing, for teaching us about leaders. And on the topic of leadership, thank you to our next speaker, Cooper, for being a part of organizing this event. We cannot wait to hear about your story, growing up with a special needs sibling.
When I was small, I didn't even know that I was a kid with special needs. How did I find out? By other people telling me that I was different. These are the words of a 13-year-old boy named Naoki Higashida from his novel, The Reason I Jump. Naoki is just one of the millions of people around the world that are affected by autism and the stigma surrounding it. In different ways and to different degrees, People in many countries view autism as a source of disappointment, annoyance, shame, or worse. Around the world, the autism stigma keeps children from participating fully in their communities and from enjoying the same quality of life as their friends and family. My younger brother Brady was diagnosed with autism when he was little. As I've grown up with a sibling on the spectrum, I've witnessed firsthand autism's effect on a community. Luckily, my family and I have always been welcomed into inclusive and accepting environments. However, this is not the case for the majority of people around the world. In 2020, the CDC determined that approximately 1 in 54 children in the United States is diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. We, as a society, need to move forward from preconceived negative ideas surrounding those with ASD. Inclusivity and awareness are key in changing people's views. In recent years, thanks to the media and hard work of nonprofit organizations, autism has become more accepted and understood. Today, I'll be providing a brief overview of what it actually is and explaining how you can support the autism acceptance movement. I will also be sharing some personal experiences of having a sibling on the spectrum. So, what actually is autism? Here is the textbook definition. Simply put, people with autism may communicate, interact, behave, and learn in ways that are different from most other people. But this doesn't mean that they should be treated differently than anybody else. Using the words of Temple Grandin, an autistic professor at Colorado State University, I am different, not less. It is also important to note that there is not only one type of autism, it exists on a spectrum. Additionally, when many people hear the words autism and disorder in the same sentence, they immediately assume that a person's appearance is identifiable. However, there's often nothing about how people with ASD looks that sets them apart from other individuals. I can recall countless instances of people asking me, "Does he look different?" when referring to my brother. It is this lack of knowledge on the topic of autism that is bringing about untrue and misrepresented stigmas. Luckily, awareness of autism has grown in recent years. Not only has April 2nd been declared World Autism Awareness Day, but TV networks and streaming services have also created new characters that are on the spectrum. Some examples of TV shows include Atypical, The Good Doctor, and even Sesame Street. Now, before I move on, it is important to note that whenever I mention the word spectrum, I am not referring to a linear scale. A lot of people think that this line goes from more autistic to less autistic, or low functioning to high functioning, but this doesn't fully represent who a person is. The spectrum actually looks more like a color wheel, and all the colors around the outside are different autistic traits. Let's say you're in the middle. Some traits you show a lot of, and some you don't. For example, yes, some people are nonverbal. And yes, some people have repetitive behaviors, but everyone shows these traits in different levels. Meet Brady. He's 15 years old and a freshman at Groves High School. Last year, he inspired me to create a children's book for my personal project. Some of his hobbies include singing, bike riding, and playing basketball. He also enjoys watching movies and spending time with friends and family. He always has a smile on his face and has never told a lie. Despite the many challenges of daily life, he keeps impressing me with what he can achieve. No, his autism can be outgrown or cured, but I would not change a thing. He is proud of who he is, and I am too. I will always cherish how far he has come. Many years ago, he would experience very large meltdowns in crowded restaurants. This would involve shouting, screaming, and crying. It was very different from a temper tantrum, though, because when a person experiences a meltdown, they become completely overwhelmed by their current situation and temporarily lose control of their behavior. But this is understandable, right? Not to some bystanders who were just trying to enjoy their meal. My family and I would receive the nastiest glares, and I would feel bad for my parents, who could do nothing but give Brady some time, as it could take a while for him to recover from sensory overload. Luckily, my brother was not affected by other hyper or hyposensitivities. For that, we could only thank the hard work and dedication of therapists and teachers. Over the past few months, I've reached out to autism advocates across the country to hear their perspectives on how we, as students, can get involved and support the acceptance movement. Let's take a look at some of their responses. Camille Proctor, the founder and executive director of the Color of Autism Foundation, encourages us to become a part of the autistic community. Befriend someone, get to know them. Don't think that just because they have neurodiversity, they're going to be polar opposite of you. This is just one factor of who they are. There are so many other things. I couldn't agree more. Brooke Ingersoll, a psychology professor at Michigan State University, also thinks that fully engaging the autism community in outreach efforts is key to changing societal perceptions. Some other key takeaways from the interviews include Regina Starr, founder of the Forever Friends Network. The first thing that people need to do is ask. Don't be afraid. When it comes to individuals with autism, you just need to get to know people, help out, and lend a hand. Lillian Carrier, celebrity and co-founder of Artism, explains that exposure and education are necessary. The more we as autistic individuals get our faces and voices out there, the more people see who we are and what we are capable of. To read even more interviews, you can visit my website and follow Project Autism on social media. We host virtual seminars and other events to support our local Michigan community. During the month of April, you can help spread awareness simply by wearing the color blue. By sharing the autism ribbon with friends and family, you'd be surprised how much of an impact that you can make. Although it may seem cliche, choose kindness and celebrate uniqueness. Brady is the best thing that has ever happened to me. He shows me how to appreciate the little things and to have an open heart and open mind. Through him, I see the world differently, and I know that I'm a better person because of it. So just remember, autism is not a disability, it's a different ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Cooper, for that enlightening speech. I especially like learning about what I could do as an individual. And speaking of being an agent for change, I can't wait to hear from Diya, who will talk about precision medicine and how it can save lives.
Hello, my name is Diya Ramesh. In spring of 2019, my grandfather was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. Despite having 2 children that were both doctors and access to some of the best treatments in the world, his condition never improved and we lost him less than a year later. I was shattered, no doubt, but not at all surprised. To me, this was just the harsh reality of living life without a cure for the multitude of health problems that our world faces. But then I learned about something called precision medicine, and I realized that maybe aiming for a cure is the problem. A meaning singular, one, the same treatment for all. Each and every person is immeasurably distinct, and their health and bodies are too. How can one or even a few treatments effectively function for everyone, like a pair of one-size-fits-all pants? The answer is that they can't, but precision medicine is the solution to this dilemma. Precision medicine is healthcare that is tailored to each individual and takes into account their genetics, environment, and lifestyle. Note that it does not mean that each person has treatments and drugs developed specifically for them. Rather, it refers to customizing treatment and prevention options based on a person's unique genetic scenario. The large breadth of this field allows for seemingly endless different applications to benefit humanity and its population's health. However, as with any field, there are obstacles to overcome before success. Today, we will discuss why precision medicine is worth our time and effort, explore the significance of a major barrier in its way, and propose a solution to the same challenge. The overarching principle behind precision medicine is that its specificity increases the efficacy of treatment and prevention methods, in comparison to current difficulties where administered drugs and therapies don't function well or at all for many patients. For example, as explained by the American Cancer Society, estimates from the International Agency for Research on Cancer show that in 2018 alone, around the globe, there were 9.5 million cancer deaths. That's 9.5 million grandfathers, parents, children, friends, loved ones, and so much more. Almost all of us can fill in that blank because we all have or know a story, just like mine. What's worse is that this number is just for cancer. So it's clear that we have a major issue. But to even better understand why precision medicine is crucial, look no further than the age-old adage that states that if you don't do something right the first time, you will have to repeat it. According to researchers at the Molecular Drug Research Laboratory at Edinburgh Napier University, our current strategy in healthcare is just trial and error and can cause drug toxicity and extreme side effects. Additionally, right now, medicine focuses on reacting to an issue instead of trying to prevent that problem in the first place, which precision medicine will help change. Some may argue that precision medicine is less cost-effective. This is actually the opposite of the reality, though, as healthcare costs can swell quickly with non-precision medicine due to ineffective treatments causing the need for more options, misdiagnosis, treatments for side effects, and more. There are so many different ways in which precision medicine can be used to help save lives. But don't take my word for it. Just ask William Elder Jr. William was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at age 8, and at a time when the life expectancy for this disease was quite low. However, he was saved by a treatment used in patients with certain genetic mutations. And after using this treatment for the first time, he was able to breathe through his nose clearly for the first time in his life. And he told his parents, "For the first time in my life, I truly believe that I will live long enough to become a grandfather. Transforming lives doesn't get much better than that." Unfortunately, the vast potential of precision medicine is not yet universally recognized. Among the skeptics are insurers, which poses a major dilemma for consumers, as directly stated by a board member of the American Medical Association. The majority of insurance companies require more backing in the quality of precision medicine options and will not cover them unless they receive this proof. Why does this matter? Well, without insurance coverage, many patients will be unable to pay the costs for the various components comprising precision medicine. Not only will they miss out on these vital opportunities, but they will face inequities in healthcare as some others will be able to afford these options. This was far from ideal. The many benefits of precision medicine should be easily accessible to everyone in order to positively transform many more lives instead of just a few. And this is similar to how life was changed so drastically for Emily Whitehead, who, after having leukemia relapsing twice, was thought to only survive for a few more weeks. However, she received a special immunotherapy, and she not only survived, but she lives on today, cancer-free. So, how can this issue with insurance be avoided? Well, the answer lies in more funding for research and clinical trials. As quoted from Dr. Francis Collins, director of the National Institutes of Health, and Dr. Harold Varmus, who previously directed the National Cancer Institute, what is needed now is a broad research program to encourage creative approaches to precision medicine, test them rigorously, and ultimately build the evidence base needed to guide clinical practice. This solution is a triple threat in the battle for precision medicine. First, it satisfies insurance firms' need for more proof in the quality of precision medicine. With more funding, researchers will be able to prove the effectiveness of precision medicine, which will in turn allow for coverage that enables a greater percentage of the population to have access to these options. Secondly, the same proof can be used to help quell doubts in others, especially patients, thus encouraging more to take advantage of this resource. Finally, with more research, researchers will be able to better pinpoint and understand the flaws in our current precision medicine techniques in order to develop these techniques further and create new ones. All in all, it's a win-win situation for everyone. However, the funding is required in order to allow for the maximum amount of research and clinical trials in as short a time frame as possible. This is crucial as precision medicine could be the key to saving and assisting so many more patients, just like how precision medicine was used to treat six-time MVP of the NBA, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, for his leukemia, and he lives on today. Today, we learned all about the great potential of precision medicine, delved into a major challenge in its way, and hypothesized a method to resolve this same issue. It is clear from stories like survivors of Emily, Kareem, and William that precision medicine is worse, facing every barrier. With more precision medicine access in the past, maybe I wouldn't have to speak about my grandfather in the past tense, but at least I can have hope for the future, knowing that with precision medicine we can save millions more just like him. Thank you.
That was amazing, Diya. With new technology being introduced every day that will improve our lives for the better, we must ensure safe practices and equitability, which is why I am so excited to hear Marina's speech on legislating technology.
Nowadays, there's so much in the news that it's hard to keep up, but you may have heard somewhere in all that jumble about the Facebook scandal. The information of more than 500 million accounts were found on hacker websites. It included information like their full names, birthdays, and email addresses. This is not the first time Facebook and its data collection has come under fire. Like back in 2014, when data from a personality quiz via the app Ocean added to Facebook accounts allowed Cambridge Analytica to gain access to users' personal data. Facebook first became available to the public in September of 2006, when the first cell phone was released 37 years ago. Not a lot of people were thinking about platforms like Facebook. Instead, the fears were more based around whether the computers would be able to handle the shift into the 21st century. Technology has advanced so quickly that legislation hasn't had enough time to catch up. That's why again and again we see Facebook and other similar companies showing up in the news with headlines containing words like privacy concerns or personal data breach. Today I am talking specifically about the lack of privacy regulations in the United States, and it's necessary to admit the existence of some basic laws in place to protect the American public. These include the Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986 and the Financial Services Modernization Act of 1999, the latter which protects the public digital communications either orally or written from being tapped by the government, and the former which requires financial services to provide an opt-out selection for customers who do not wish for their information to be sold to third parties. There's also a piece of legislation known as COPPA, or Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule of 1998, which outlines certain requirements for the operators of online services which collect or store information of children 12 years of age or younger. The problem with these laws, however, is that the majority of them were first instituted more than 2 decades ago, and as I mentioned before, Facebook did not even exist then. The issue resides in the fact that this lack of current laws to address the present environment means courts have resorted to interpreting and applying old laws to cases rather than creating new laws that actually apply to these scenarios. The third-party doctrine of 1967 is a prime example of this. It decrees that a person loses their Fourth Amendment rights to privacy if they provide information voluntarily to a third party. That means in the hands of a third party, the government can conduct a warrantless search of a person's information. The thing is, today so much of our data exists in the hands of digital third parties, and it's not just all of our homework and assignments on Google Docs. We share our locations, passwords, medical history, and opinions with third-party companies. A real-world example of this playing out exists in the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, which 49 out of the 50 states, as well as Washington, D.C. and Guam currently have in place. This program manages prescriptions of controlled substances, which are drugs that can cause dependence in a person and have risk for abuse. This program allows for medical practitioners to better understand the prescriptions of their patients, as well as how to form future treatment plans and help people who are at risk for abuse. In New Hampshire, a law exists which prevents law enforcement from gaining information via these PDMPs unless a search warrant is approved by a judge. But the Drug Enforcement Administration, a federal agency, believes they have the right to access this private information without said warrant. The DEA argues that because of the third-party doctrine, the patient loses their Fourth Amendment rights to privacy because they have provided their information voluntarily to their pharmacists and doctors, which ends up in the PDMP. The DEA's access would only prevent people in need from providing information for fear of incarceration. Although the court ruled in favor of the patient represented by the ACLU, there is no specific statute that ensures this type of ruling will repeat itself in future cases. And this is when people know the data they are providing the third parties with. A lot of the time, we don't completely understand what data we are giving to these third companies, because legally they don't have to tell us. Those cookies that you agree to when you log on to a website, they allow websites to personalize the user experience, but do you want the website knowing your location or searches on other websites? Do you even understand what the website does with the data? According to Pew Research Center, over 50% of people have little or no understanding about what companies do with the data collected, and nearly 80% of people feel the same way in correspondence with the government. Fortunately, there is hope. Although the federal government is not taking any major steps, state governments like those in California and Virginia have begun to introduce internet privacy legislation. California in particular is a leader in the movement for stronger privacy rules. Under the CCPA, or California Consumer Privacy Act, consumers have the right to know what personal information that websites are using and how it is being used. They also have the ability to delete any collected personal information with some exceptions and opt out of the sale of their data. The final part, and possibly most important part of the CCPA, is that consumers gain the right to non-discrimination for exercising their CPPA rights. If California and Virginia set precedent, it is possible other states will follow, especially with the encouragement of their residents. There are already several other states like Connecticut, Oklahoma, Minnesota, Mississippi, and New York who have begun working to pass privacy laws this year. In the end, though, it's up to you and I, and all consumers to make a point of encouraging lawmakers to introduce this sort of legislation and hold third-party companies like Facebook accountable. It's time to update our privacy laws.
Thank you, Marina. I learned so much. While regulating technology is important, we need to make sure that the right politicians are in office, which is why it's my pleasure to introduce Rachel to talk about campaign financing systems.
My name is Rachel Rochford, and today I'll be talking to you about the campaign financing system. While this may seem very removed from our everyday lives, it actually directly impacts them because it affects how we elect our legislators. So one of the main decisions that has created the campaign finance system we see today occurred in 2010 when the Supreme Court gave their verdict on the Citizens United versus the Federal Election Committee case and forever altered the foundation of campaign finance as they did so. This case arose as a challenge from the nonprofit group Citizens United after the Federal Election Committee, or the FEC, prevented the group from promoting and airing a film criticizing then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton too close to the presidential primaries. In a controversial 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that corporations and other outside groups could spend limitless money on campaigns so long as they did not do so in coordination with a candidate. And at the time, Chief Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote that putting a cap on, quote, independent political spending, end quote, from corporations and other groups would limit the First Amendment right to free speech. But in its quest to uphold American constitutional values, this ruling may have actually done more to undermine them than anything else. It opened Pandora's box of wealthy campaign donors, and in doing so, allowed for an election system where a small number of wealthy donors yield a frightening amount of influence over elections. Politicians are more focused on re-election than doing their jobs, and incumbents nearly always hold on to their seats, preventing the integration of new voices into the American political sphere. So let's start with donors. With the current system, it would be easy to believe that a majority of Americans were involved in financing the campaigns of the politicians they support. But this is simply untrue. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, in the 2020 election cycle, less than 1.6% of the female adult population and 2.1% of the male adult population in the United States donated over $200 to any campaign. And while some candidates such as Bernie Sanders do run a campaign on many small donations, most are relying on a very small number of high-value donors. The system allows a disproportionately small number of Americans an extremely large amount of control over who receives what funding. This is problematic as, according to the Center for Responsive Politics, in elections for the House of Representatives, 90% of candidates whose campaigns generate more revenue win their elections. From 2000 to 2016, this was true for every election cycle, but that of 2010, where this number was only slightly lower at 86%. Now, when taken as a whole, this means that an extremely small percent of the American population is deciding who wins the political elections that impact the entire population. It is in this way that the current system of political financing undermines democracy, as our political representatives are often not true representatives of what the majority believes. Rather, they are a mismatch of candidates who receive the most financial support from a very small number of individuals and corporations. With the current system, then, politicians are highly incentivized to seek donations as they plan their next campaign. This is problematic because it draws attention away from doing their jobs, and as we've covered, elections are not cheap. The Center for Responsive Politics found that slightly over $8 billion were spent in the 2020 congressional runs, while over $5 billion was spent on the presidential race that year. Large quantities of money are not raised overnight, and many incumbents will begin fundraising for their re-election while in office. And this creates an issue for two reasons. Firstly, it means that politicians are spending time that could be used on their actual job, bettering the country, on fundraising, and their re-election campaigns several years down the road. Secondly, this fundraising treadmill results in a landscape where politicians are reliant on holding on to the support of large donors. This is problematic because it means that politicians are encouraged not to vote and work in a way that would best represent their constituents, but in a way that would work to serve their large donors, who again make up a very small percentage of the American population. Furthermore, according to termlimits.com, Congress only has an approval rating of 14%, yet in the past, up to 90% of incumbents have been re-elected. Large donors know this, and consequently, they tend to give more money to incumbents than to someone challenging that person, as it is a much safer bet. And this creates a cycle where the current holder of a position receives more funding, and because of this, these candidates have more money and therefore a better chance at success and re-election. This makes it very easy for a candidate to hold on to their seat until they hit the end of a term limit, if there is one. And this is problematic because it prevents new ideas from entering politics. If no one is able to win against an incumbent, that candidate may become stagnant, while a newer mind would have brought more ideas and tenacity to the job. The system keeps new voices out of politics, preventing fresh viewpoints and new ideas. And there's a lot of room for improvement, and efforts are being made towards progress on this topic. Just last year, the House passed the For the People Act, which is a revival of the 2019 bill of the same name that also passed in the House but never made it to the Senate. This bill covers a variety of topics, including ballot access, strengthening ethics rules for public servants, anti-corruption measures, and, as we'll discuss, the influence of big money in politics. The most important thing that this bill does for campaign finance is to require organizations to disclose large donors. Any organization spending over $10,000 in one election cycle would be required to disclose all campaign reimbursements above $1,000, the name of the candidate impacted by that reimbursement. They would have to give a signed certificate that nothing was done in coordination with any candidate's campaign, and the name of every person with significant ownership or control interest in an organization would have to be disclosed, along with the names of donors who gave at least $10,000 that election cycle. This clause of the bill would be very beneficial to pass, though it does have some limitations. For instance, donors who give more than $10,000 would not be required to give their name if it would either put them in danger, they restricted the use of the funds when they gave them, or if the funds were received in the organization's ordinary course of business. And loopholes like these create problems because they give these large donors an easy way out of making their name known. Still, this bill has many benefits. Another of its clauses would require political committees to disclose to the FEC any contributions over $5,000 that they received within 20 days of an election. It would also require super PACs who purchase political ads to disclose their top donors and officials or the location where one can find that information as a disclaimer on the ad. Despite some of its broad language and loftier aims, this bill would lay a hugely important foundation for a more sustainable system of campaign finance. Unfortunately, the partisan divide in the Senate is so great that this bill has no chance of passing. Still, its existence is a sign of brighter days to come, and one may only hope that its reforms will eventually be made. Our current system of campaign finance is severely flawed, and this has serious consequences. To name just a few of the problems it creates, the current system fosters an environment where a very small number of wealthy donors fund the majority of all elections. Politicians are incentivized to spend their time fundraising for their next election rather than working at the job they were elected to do, and incumbents tend to receive more funding than their opponents, meaning that they often hold on to their seats whether they are doing a good job or not, and this often makes it hard for new voices to break into our political scene. All in all, reform is needed, and the actions outlined in the For the People Act regarding campaign finance are a good first step. And until any legislative change occurs, our elections will remain misrepresentative of the beliefs of the American populace, a failing in democracy that we cannot continue to accept. Thank you.
We would like to give our sincere thanks to Dr. Smith for making Q possible. And once again, thank you to our incredible speakers. You've all been an amazing audience, and we cannot wait to see you again next year.